I just want it to be a hit it and quit it kind of show where people are just, they get in the car, they get in the ride, they put the bar down, and we're off.
She is an actress, comedian, director, choreographer, and writer who's been seen on Broadway, TV, and film.
She's written and performed several solo shows, her latest being Mother and Me, currently touring the USA.
Multi-hyphenate Melinda Buckley joins us on today's episode. My name is Nancy Magarill. I'm a singer, songwriter, composer, performer, graphic and web designer.
And I'm Peter Michael Marino, and I'm a writer, producer, creator, performer, and educator.
We are New York-based artists you may or may not have heard of.
And we are here to introduce you to other artists you may or may not have heard of. I was talking about, Nancy asked me, as any good co-host would do, logging on to an hour worth of recording. How are you, Pete? And it had that kind of you don't look like everything's great. And I was like, oh yeah, my head is just on 100 projects. And then I'm staring at the beautiful Melinda Buckley. And I'm like, oh, she knows what I'm talking about. You are full on independent artist, business person. You're all over the freaking place. Our connection is, one of the things we'll be talking about today, and that is we met through the world of solo shows. Do you want to tell our listeners what that means? Because I'm not in the mood.
Oh, good.
I remember you when you were I didn't really know you, but you were running SoloCom. Mm-hmm. And solo shows were the whole landscape was so different 10 years ago.
Yes.
Even 5 years ago.
Good topic of discussion for today's podcast.
Well, everything changes, right? I mean, it all...
Amen.
Yeah.
Yes.
Sometimes the bad stuff goes away, too.
Yes.
Yeah, that's true.
Maybe some bad solo stuff goes away. It's less opportunities to see that, but fewer opportunities to see good ones as well.
But there's some bad stuff right now I'm hoping is going to go away a little faster than
than a solo show.
Right.
No.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah. So that's how it's just a lot of people that do this, and we all kind of know each other, and we all support each other's work, and we all work with a lot of the same people.
Yeah.
And so you and I sort of, clearly.
Well, I knew you from SoloCom, even though I never did anything with it. And then I don't know. I know that I coached with you. I know that I went with a coaching thing, and you helped me with my blurb.
Yes, that's right.
Which I still use.
Tell us about your that show that you're talking about.
Oh, okay. So I have a solo show called Mother and Me, which is ironically about my mother and me.
What's the subtitle? What's the blurb?
I know it's going to be hard for people to figure that one out.
It was a daughter's story of love lost and goulash. That's was the quick thing. But yeah, so I had done solo shows, but they were always character stuff because I kind of came out of the Groundlings, and so I had
did
a
not
show
know
called,
that.
Yeah.
Is that where you're from? Chicago? Or...
No. The Groundlings are
LA,
in LA.
I'm sorry, yeah.
But then they came here and they did a Groundlings East kind of thing. And then it turned into Gotham City.
Those were the days. Wow.
Yeah, it was really, really fun. And, improv was never really my thing, but I loved the writing characters and the writing the scenes and, and things like that. So I did a solo show called Calendar Girls, and it was all women on different holidays.
Oh.
And it was really fun.
Oh, how perfect for you that you get to embody different voices and characters and all that stuff.
And what was the point of view? What were you trying to convey?
They were just.
Was it like a talking head? Not talking heads. Talking with piece where it was all different kinds of characters, just all different kinds of female characters.
Yeah, it was just sort of we started on New Year's Eve, and it was just a really terrible cabaret character on Y2 Gay. It was right around 2001, and it was this character, and then it went to. I used to have a really fun skit about a skit.
Well, there still are skits.
They are.
Good day, bad day, good date, bad date, which was really fun. I love sound effects. I love all kinds of things like that. So
Foley, radio stuff, or doing.
Yeah,
them?
it was. Oh, yeah, no, it was recorded.
Yeah.
Samples.
Back in the day when you were recording them on your little tape
deck,
your little cassettes.
Yeah, you'd put the pencil in and you'd have to wind it up to just the moment where the cue comes.
Yes. Oh my God.
Oh my God. You kids don't know how good you have it.
Exactly. But, I had it was just all different women on this. I had like a lady Foot Locker person who was coming out on Pride Day.
Wow.
So it was basically Calendar Girls, 12 12 crazy ass women through 1 year of craziness. Yeah.
And I think now, of course, I think one of the challenges with it was finding that kind of through line, finding that what connects all this, why we just, seeing one person after the other. Now that I've been in this world and teach and things like that, it's sort of all the ways you could have connected it and things. Learning about structure.
Yeah.
So Mother and Me is, I never wanted, the reason why I didn't, I just did character shows and I never wanted to do a solo show that I talked about myself because I thought it was so indulgent. And, we saw so many people, It's
like, why who wants to hear me?
Yeah. And that's what I think is the gift of Matt Hoverman and Go Solo. And his particular way of teaching structure was, you're not actually writing about you. You're finding what the universal thing is, and you're writing about everybody.
Yeah,
you're writing about what
people
you're
can
giving the
connect to.
audience.
Right.
Yeah.
What you're giving an audience. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. Thank God for Matt Hoverman. He's LA based, or now he's New York too, isn't he?
Well, he's doing mostly Zoom workshops, so he can reach everybody. But and he took a break for a while. I was teaching with him, and I remember I was trying to, because he has a L1 and L2, both fantastic classes. When it brought me on as kind of like an associate artistic director for a year or something here in New York, and we were trying to do an L3, because
Take your show to Broadway. With Melinda Buckley, Broadway, Corrine.
So what does the L stand for? Is that level 1, level 2?
Level,
right.
Yeah, I mean, that's something I'm assuming that you kind of understood about this class structure thing because of your time with the Groundlings. Am I right?
Yes.
Yeah. So in this world of comedy, it's a weird schemey kind of thing that actually works for everyone. And that is if you keep taking these classes someday, you'll have 2 minutes on that stage.
Wow. What's the top level?
So that's why you keep going back, but also because you're learning more,
Well, and I think that maybe in some
this
of those...
this is the Groundlings. I'm not talking about Matt. I'm not talking about Matt.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think in a lot of these cases, they have a certain philosophy and they have these are the fundamentals. And until you get those, you can't really take it to the next level of the fundamentals.
Right.
It's like taking beginning ballet. You just sort of need to know the positions. So, and with Matt, what's great about it is, he does an L1, which lays out everything that he's going to be talking about in terms of structure and gives you exercises where you learn those tools. And then in L2, you start applying it to your story. And then you can take, like me, I think I probably took 10 L2s to finish my story because you just keep working on different sections. So what I've been doing is, I'm offering coaching and classes and things like that. And I try to help people when they have 45 minutes or an hour, because that's when you're really in the weeds, really figuring out how does this apply to the whole thing. Yeah. And that's when I brought Pete in. You taught my students, because people have to understand that, it's great that you wrote it, but now what are you going to do?
Yeah, right. What's next? I mean, sometimes people like me, I won't write it unless I know what's happening. I need that goalpost to
It can be very frustrating because you can flounder around, which sometimes is great. I'm a snowball down the hill creator, so I like to do that sometimes. But I think when you do have an idea of where you want to go, it is helpful.
But you're working with a very wide array of personalities, ages, types, and skill levels. So you have people who are writers who've never acted. You have actors who have never written. You've had comics who want to do more storytelling, and you have storytellers who want to do more comedy. There's, then you have and I want mine to be multimedia. Okay, and then you have that whole type of show. There's so many different ways that, for myself, when I was I taught this solo show classes, level 1 and 2, at the Pit for, 5 years. It was very hard to get to everybody every week. You have to be there for 5 hours. You have to make it a retreat, because you're dealing with, I'm working with her structure and her writing happening and what's, and then Melinda, I'm working with we don't understand your point of view, or we don't really get the character, or there's just so many, oh my gosh, it's a lot. So it's a lot for the teacher. So clearly it's a lot for students as well, because I think people go into this thinking, I'm just going to write my story and tell my story, and it happened to me, so it's going to be great.
Right.
And what they learn is that that's not true.
So the thing about learning structure, because I just went through that, we talked about
Nancy,
this.
You're doing this as well.
With Gretchen Crier's class.
Oh, yeah.
It's hard for people to tell stories if they don't have a perspective, or if they don't have, not everybody has the gift of storytelling, I think.
That's another skill. That's another skill that you need on top of writing.
Absolutely. And I learned this as a songwriter. There are a lot of people that write songs that you're just like, you just don't have a way with words. I think one of the reasons I was so afraid of going into the solo writing world, I'm a songwriter and a singer, and I love writing songs. I love writing lyrics. Give me that, 2 to 3 minute bit of music, and I'm there. Writing a whole show is a whole other thing. It's a whole other world, and it's really interesting. And trying to tell the story from other people's points of view, other characters. There's so many different things you can do, but it's very challenging. So I find it interesting that you morphed from working with characters to going into your own story, which we were talking about a little bit. So,
but there are characters in that story as well, are there not?
Of course, right?
Yeah. Well, it's also I personally like a story that's not just a Spalding Gray sit at a desk. That's a wonderful thing if you're that person.
Right.
But I'm more animated and use different, I'll, instead of telling about my brother, I'll become my brother. Or, so the characters are serving the story. They're not anything, but I feel like it's a...
John Leguizamo does that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Good example.
Yeah.
Anna Devere Smith.
Yeah.
Yep. Yeah, exactly.
2 other people.
Well, there are a bunch.
It made Whoopi Goldberg a star. And Lily Tomlin. There we go. We got them all.
Yes,
we got them all.
We're going back to that book, that exposure, the extreme exposure book that we were talking about, that Gretchen, on the first day, Gretchen was like, you have to get this book. And it talks about all the different styles and the different ways of doing that kind of performance. All the different people who have done it throughout the years, and their different styles and the different ways of writing, and what person you're writing, and how you're dealing with the audience. And it's challenging because you can try all different things within one show.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I think it really just kind of comes down to you.
Yeah.
And it's so helpful to read all of those different people. The other one that's great is Charlene Woodward.
Oh, I don't know her.
She was in the original cast of Ain't Misbehaving.
Yeah.
And then she wrote a bunch of solo shows. And they're great. They are that combination of theatrical and telling the story. I mean, she tells these incredibles. I think one show was Pretty Fires, and it's about when she was a kid and she went to visit down south, and people were burning crosses.
Oh, God.
In the front yard. So, I mean, it's just a powerful story.
Wow.
Yeah.
So talk more about your show. What are you doing with it? Where are you at with it?
It was at the Fringe Festival, and my friend Barbara Whitman, who has become like a Broadway producer, but I've known her since we did dinner theater together, and we're really, really close friends.
Amazing.
And I've always had this thing with, because at this point, right, we all know kind of famous people. And, but I go the opposite way of never wanting to ask for anything.
Yeah.
And so I said, come to the show with our other friends, and, you'll see it at the Fringe. And I think it was 5 shows, and she loved it. And she texted me after the show saying, I think it's amazing and I'm going to help you.
Oh, that's
and
wonderful.
I was like, oh my God. It was just this kind of dream. So she brought on Kimberly Senior, who had just directed the Tony Award winning Disgraced on Broadway, and got together a team. We were at Second Stage doing a developmental workshop.
That's good.
And that's wonderful.
Yeah, and then we just started I saw that they were doing a solo fest in Chicago at Greenhouse Theater, and we submitted it there. We got in there, so it was in Chicago for 2 weeks, and then all along. Okay, so the show is about the 10-year journey of my mom with Alzheimer's, but she was really funny, and it was really important to me that the show be funny because she was hysterical. So my friend, James Lacine, who's now Celeste Lacine, had some friends in Provincetown who had started this, fledgling caregiving organization. They're two wonderful, wonderful people, have started the Alzheimer's Family Support Center of Cape Cod.
Oh my gosh, that's specific.
Yes, but it is very specific. It's not connected to the Alzheimer's Association. They offer all their services for free.
Wow.
And they are amazing.
Wow, God bless this.
They've been so ahead of the curve with all kinds of treatments and social things. And I mean, they're just amazing, amazing women. So my friend Celeste was like, why don't you go do a benefit? And I was like, okay. So we went, and I love Melanie. She just started calling theaters on Cape Cod, and she got the Cape Playhouse, which is this major
That's great. That's a great
theater.
spot. It's a great spot.
It's a great place. And it just so happened that the executive director was Mark Cuddy, who is also was the artistic director of Jiva Theater, who I also happened to go to college with.
Yeah. Where was that?
UMass Amherst.
Great.
An agricultural school, because, when you want to be an artist.
Where else?
Where else?
But there is like a slice of people. There's always people who, when you ask, where'd you go to school? Actor people that you're like, yep, you went there, or you went to, NYU, or you went to Sarah Lawrence. Yeah. That's going to be my final. Sarah Lawrence. I could tell by your clothes.
Yes. So anyway, I hadn't talked to Mark in years. I had no idea that he was there. I had no idea that she was calling. But he saw my name. He's like, oh, sure, we'll do it. And so we did it. And I didn't even know if he was going to come and see it. But it was just one of those shows that it was just like an amazing response. And in fact, somebody wrote about it in this paper. And then Mark wrote me and he said, like, that was amazing. And I'm going to put you on the season at Jiva.
Oh, yay.
So it was just sort of this, like, things just were
Who directed? Who's the director
at Jiva?
No, well, like, did you go through a series of directors in the development?
Well, Christine Renee Miller was the first director. She also taught for Matt.
Yep.
So she was the first director.
Yep.
And then when we kind of like needed, honestly, Barbara's thinking was that I'm not a name. They needed to, we sort
Who's
of
going to play you?
We needed to bring in people. So that's why Kimberly came in, because Kimberly was just directed the Tony Award winning Disgraced. She had a connection to Alzheimer's with her family. We wanted it to be all women.
Yeah.
So Kimberly was the director. And then once it was sort of set, it ended up that Mark just kind of came in because he was already there. He directed it in Chicago because she couldn't get there. So it was just this
synchronicity.
It was all the synchronicity with it. So that kind of like launched it. And from there, we've done, I've never gone back to fringes, but I've done like lots of regional theaters.
Yeah.
That kind of thing with it. I was just in West Hartford at the Playhouse on Park, which is a lovely, lovely theater and organization. I mean, I can't say enough about them, really.
It's really great when you get to go do your show somewhere and like you're meeting a whole new community of people for 2 days. That's it, right? We're just going to like get to know each other and have fun and bye.
And you know what? My hat goes off like the Bridge Street guys, John and Steven up in Catskill, New York, and Darlene and Sean, the people running West Hartford. These people are doing God's work.
Yeah.
They are bringing theater in. They're doing these wonderful productions. They're thought provoking. They're community engaging. Theater. They're supporting theater, and sad to say, there's a lot of great theater, of course, in New York. I'm not going to say that, but my hat goes off to these people that are creating it, and building community in those places.
Do you feel like when you're going out of town, you're getting different responses from different kinds of audiences? Is it helping you shape your pieces at all, or is it just that are you able to see what resonates with the majority of people? Like,
Great question.
I'm curious to know, like, the strategy, or is it just about growing it? Like, what is the strategy behind going to all these different places?
Well, my strategy is always, number one, I always connect with an Alzheimer's group, whether it's the Alzheimer's Association or another caregiving thing. I'm always like aiming for there to be a community aspect to this, a talk back.
Yeah.
It's
a whole event. They're not just going in and sitting down and watching it.
Yeah, sure. It's an event because I want people to come in to this piece and laugh and cry with me. Like, they're going to laugh because, like anybody who goes through anything, any kind of illness, there are specifics to it that you only know if you've gone through it. There are all those moments where you have to laugh, because if you don't,
Right.
you're going to absolutely lose it. So, the show really gets people to laugh, but it also gets them to cry. And I think for some people, that's
It's a cathartic.
service.
Yeah.
It's a service. So to get to your question, Nancy, what I like to do every time I do the show is I look at where can it be better. So I don't necessarily tailor it to, I'm going to West Hartford, or I'm going to Arizona, or, I don't really think about it that way. I'm thinking about can I make this section tighter?
Right.
Can I make this joke funnier? Because when you're doing it, you always sense, at least I do, there's always a section where you go am I losing them here? And I want it to be bam, bam, bam.
Yeah.
I just want it to be a hit it and quit it kind of show where people are just, they get in the car, they get in the ride, they put the bar down, and we're off.
Yeah, they want to see how we get to the finish. They want to see how we get to the ending, right?
Yeah.
You want them to want to see, how is this going to end? Not when is this going to end?
Yes. Exactly.
Although, one of the things I love about Hannah Gadsby is you get in the car with her and you're driving at a speed, but the speed changes the whole time. You don't know. You know you're going to get there, but you don't always know when, right? Which is kind of exciting, right? You're I'm on the edge of my seat with her because
Right.
I'm waiting to see when that, as she says, the mic is going to drop.
Yeah.
And when
Right.
it drops, it's holy shit.
Yeah.
You know?
Right.
So I
Right.
don't necessarily feel like it always has to be the same pace or that same.
No.
You always have that feeling, that urgency of getting there. I think there can be levels, and maybe that's not what you're talking about.
I don't think that we're saying that. I mean, luckily we're not saying that everything has to be the way I talk,
Yeah, no, it's not necessarily about pacing.
Not at all. It's
But it
about I mean, I always, when I'm directing or whatever, a solo show, I'm okay, is the ride like this? Or is the ride like this?
Right.
I want to. Okay, so how do we do that without just talking faster or adding silly music or whatever?
Right.
Sometimes it's literally just cutting the fuck out of a section and performing it in just a different manner. It's whatever. I'm just making things up right now, but
Yeah.
And that's just to make sure you're keeping people on the rope. You're keeping them in, right?
Yeah.
well,
You
that
just
all
don't
comes
wanna
down to
lose-
storytelling.
Right.
It all comes down to the story, the way it's written, which goes back to talking earlier. When you're working on a solo show, chances are you don't have a lot of experience writing stories. So it's once somebody makes it clear to you, look, here's what your story needs to be. Once upon a time, and then one day, and just when everything was going so well, and just at the last minute, and we all lived happy.
Right.
That is literally the answer, by the way. It's David Mamet. He's 100% right. There's literally no story ever written that does not follow that. None.
Right.
So
it.
he's
I love
right.
it.
There's,
Yeah.
I'm going to charge for this episode too, Nancy. That's really good advice. But our job as director and developer is to try to find different ways to sell or to engage the audience with particular sections. I know, with Amy Mark's show Nice Tits, which is a reconstructive breast cancer comedy.
I actually saw that.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
We found that Barbie helped us deliver information that would normally be thought of as didactic because it's medical stuff.
Right.
So that was a device that we just discovered in the process of looking through the script and going, well, you do say that you were a Barbie fan when you were a kid. Maybe she can be your guide through the whole show, And then
So
that also
cool.
gave us comedy,
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, but without picking up the pace.
Right.
Here's a little trick that I kind of learned in Edinburgh, which I really think is 100% accurate. And it was a European storyteller comic person who said it. If an hour-long show, at the 40-minute mark, everything has to change.
Yeah.
Right?
Wow.
Yeah.
Change it. Something. I mean, you watch a Hannah Gadsby or one of those other type of European storyteller or Australian storytellers, you're dying. You're like, fuck.
Yeah.
I'm dying again. That's just that's the way it
Wow.
works. And all the best shows in Edinburgh are like that. I
Wow.
literally sit there with my watch and go, yep, 40 minutes in.
It's funny. I was thinking
so
about
interesting.
what we talked about with Daniel Spector the other day about how when you're when young actors are doing a monologue coming into audition for school, to make sure that they have something at the beginning, emotion, and then they change at the end. Basically, I'm paraphrasing.
Yeah.
So today I actually on my way to work, I was looking at a monologue that I've worked on. And I was like, I want to take that approach to this and redo this. And it was so much fun to think about, well, how can it change? And also thinking about taking, actions in a different way. And it was really fun to think about that, because I do think that's the thing about storytelling and songwriting and everything, is that the art of surprise, right? That and it's the other thing he said about Mark Rylance, that the audience is there on the journey with you. So they've never been here before, right? And you take them, they don't know where it's going, and he's discovering it at the same time. And that's really exciting. And I find that as an audience member, that's when I'm the most excited. And by the way, I saw Gypsy last night.
Yay!
And yes, and I thought Audra McDonald is the Mark Rylance of musical theater to me.
Well put.
I was like, I've never, I think I saw her in something years ago. I haven't seen her enough, and now I want to watch every fucking thing she's done. I was so blown away, because every moment she is there and she's loving, and everything is a surprise or a decision. It was so wonderful to watch her,
Can I give you one little?
Yes.
Can I share one little thing?
Yeah.
I gave Audra her equity card.
You're kidding!
No!
Oh, I love
Thank you, Melinda.
Oh my God, what happened? What was it?
Thank you.
Oh, that's so great.
On behalf of every homosexual in New York City.
Right.
Thank you.
Hashtag Audra McDonald.
Yes, exactly.
Make a note, Nancy. Make a note.
I already, believe me, when I edit it, I'll write it down.
So I got into my other career. I was,
Broadway.
dancer, doing like all that stuff. And then I, to make money, would do industrials and a lot of car shows.
Because you are a dancer, and the dancers come in very handy. And you're a character person who also comes in handy at industrials.
Yes.
And you're beautiful, which also comes in handy. Full disclosure, total crush on Melinda. Total crush. I think you're the third guest in the past 2 weeks that I've said that to. So let me just start by saying I am totally in love with you. Thank you.
Anyway, we were doing a big industrial. I was with a, production company. Someone, I think the boyfriend of the choreographer, knew this girl who was graduating from Juilliard.
Wow.
And we needed somebody to sing, there was a whole Olympic theme to the industrial. It was from Mars. I don't know if I'm going to get in trouble saying anyway.
No, I don't think.
But,
the candy company?
Yeah.
Amazing.
Yes. And they had there was this big number where they had all these, Mary Lou Retton, they had all these people come out and do their thing on like all the beams and all this stuff, while someone had to sing One Moment in Time.
Wow.
And we auditioned, and someone said, I know this girl from Juilliard.
Oh my God.
And Audra came in and sang and got the job. So, and I
got
don't know
her
if you know
part.
Jim New. Yep, she got the part.
Wow.
And I co-choreographed it with Michael Metz, who is the choreographer, and Jonathan Brielle was the musical director. Jonathan's doing a lot of stuff with Goodspeed, and had a musical about Nora, I think it was called.
Do you miss those days of choreographing and doing that kind of work? Or do you feel like you've become, like this was where you've always wanted to be? Or is it just that it's changed because, we get older and we do different things, or what?
Yeah, I mean, for a long time, I directed and choreographed big industrial things, with orchestras and 30 equity cast people.
And 10 hours.
Yeah. We did like all these things. There's so many stories. And then I think, to some degree, I'm sure that they still do those things, but the industry kind of changed.
Yeah. And they cut the budgets a lot.
They cut the budgets a lot,
Yeah.
a lot. And a lot of that work just sort of like went away. And then I started, because I was already in that world, and, I started writing them more. And then I started creative directing. So, I've done a lot of like big things. I did the, Bloomberg does a huge event at the, when the UN is in town and things. So we did a big climate summit a couple of years ago, with Matt Damon, and it was Bloomberg that was like running it, but it was two different like morning session, afternoon session. Prince William, he has a thing called Earth Shot, which is, a really wonderful, wonderful thing that goes around the world and finds where people are coming up with solutions, like real world solutions. And then he scales them. He gets them in front of money people. And then we can do them at, at larger scales. And it's, really, really, really wonderful work. And it's just so hard to think about it in this current climate.
In this current climate. And it's only going to get worse.
Anyway, I just to sort of like wrap up, whether I missed that or whatever, things evolved, I evolved. And then now I'm a speechwriter, CEO coach for, all kinds of different industries. And I like that so much better because all of that other work was so time consuming.
Yeah.
And now I've got like this really great niche with a couple of fantastic clients where I help them with all their press events, all their stuff. And then I have, I've got a little play that's going to be in on the Cape for 3 months coming up, and it's also been turned into a podcast.
That's
great. And so I have the time to do my creative stuff.
Is it your play?
Yeah, no, it's not my solo show. It's a play I've written.
That's great.
When we're looking at you in your apartment, I've seen two different cats. I believe I've seen two different cats.
I thought
There
I
are
only
three.
saw
There are
one.
three.
But...
Oh, there's three. Okay, I literally thought it just changed color when I looked at my notepad. And right behind you is a Crazy for You poster.
Yes.
Which was at the Schubert Theater, I believe, right? Mm-hmm. And just quick little sidebar, Nancy. It was choreographed by Susan Stroman, who is that choreographer that made me take over the curtain call.
Yes.
That started with,
right.
Okay. That's
Yes.
I thought about the curtain calls last night, the conversation with Marlo about, and whoever else it was.
Yeah.
When I watched the curtain call last night, I was like, God, this is just the dumbest thing to have curtain calls.
I don't like the curtain call for Gypsyettes.
I think it should just be everybody just goes on stage at once and goes, we're done.
That happens
Bye-bye.
sometimes. But, it is an opportunity for the performer to thank the audience. That is very much what I think you're saying. You're saying, thank you. You're not saying, give me.
I loved the Crazy for You curtain call because it was...
Oh, it was crazy.
It was crazy and it was so fun.
What was it?
So it was, people did come out and do their,
It was like vignettes from everything you saw from the show.
Yeah, but they
that's
came out and
cool.
they did like different things. It ended with a big kick line. It was just fantastic.
that's
Lasso tricks,
Yes,
it was
yes.
like,
That's fun.
there's Susan and Mike right there. That's their personality all over the place. So then let's say, okay, so I'm talking about your poster because you're offered the role of Madame Morrible on Broadway and you start next month. Do you say yes or no?
Oh, well, I would love to. I would love to go back to do a show. I
You would.
absolutely would,
You would.
love. Yeah.
Yeah.
What
You'd like to have
killed me
like a year contract in a Broadway. Like you think that you'd get into that groove?
I think I would absolutely. I think it would also be really dependent on the role.
Yeah.
I would love the role that comes out in Act 2.
Yeah.
know,
It's Madame Morrible, I'm telling you.
Exactly. He just kind of like steals it, has a number, has a whatever, and then you're done.
Melinda, I literally just saw a Facebook memories from like when I was doing Pip's Island, and I said like, I love that I'm at the age when they say we're cutting your song. You go, thank you, Jesus. They make it like you're really going to take it bad, Peter, we know, and I'm just like, what? We're cutting the song. Thank you. I have less to do.
Exactly.
Thank God we became those people.
Yes. Crazy for You almost killed me. I mean, it was...
Why?
Because I took over for Beth Level. And
That's no small feat there.
No. I mean, that was the thing. Everyone loves and adores for good reason. I mean, Beth is amazing.
Well, and this also really put her in the spotlight at that time as well, right? Because she's doing very funny stuff, very big stuff.
Yeah. I mean, this was kind of like part of the breakthrough.
Yeah.
Where I think it was Drowsy that really put her on the map.
That's probably how she got Drowsy, in a way.
Yeah. I had never been a replacement before. And a replacement in a big Broadway show like that, you get a week in a studio with, the
musical
in that
director?
show, I called them like the tap Nazi and
Dance captain.
the dance captain, and then you get one put in.
Wow.
And
my God.
in that show, I mean, if you've seen like I got that big
never
number
saw
that
it.
ends. I remember and it was just so crazy how I got the job. And oh my God.
Did you go watch? Did you rehearse all day and then watch the show every night?
I didn't watch it every night, but I did rehearse all day and watch it, and then there were some nights I just had to go and like
work
and just kind of like absorb and things. But
Yeah.
can I tell you the funny little audition story? I'll try to
Yeah.
make it like really, really short.
Yeah.
So Vinny Liff, from Johnson Liff, lived in my building. He was a lovely, lovely. I loved him so much. But it's odd when you have like the major casting director for all the Broadway shows that lives in your building that is kind of your friend, but then you see him at auditions.
Yeah, right. It's like seeing your therapist in the supermarket.
Exactly. And there would be these moments where he'd be in the elevator. And, I'm on the 16th, he was on the 12th. So, I'm on the elevator, the door would open, Vinny would get in, and he would do things like, oh, I was just thinking about you. And, and he would be like, come on, let's get out of the elevator. And I'd be like, oh, what did I audition for? I'd be like all excited and things like that. And he'd be like, can you water my plants?
Oh my God.
Oh my God.
It would be moments like that.
Right.
You would just be like,
that's horrible.
Of course I will.
Of course, yeah.
Oh.
So we had one of those moments, and I was really going through, like I had a bad breakup on New Year's Eve. It was one of those Januaries. And, and I was just like so despondent. And I think in February, I lost there was a big job that I had every March that paid all my taxes and things like that. And that fell through that year. It was just like everything. And I get in the elevator and Vinny's like, I was just thinking about you.
Oh, no.
And he pulls me out and he says, Susan Stroman is working on a new show. And he knew I did a lot of industrials and choreographing and things and she needs an assistant. And I want to recommend you. And I was like, oh my God. Yes.
You were never expecting that to be the offer. That's
No.
Right? It's out of left field.
Yeah, and he's like, put a bio, put your picture and resume under my door, and I will get it to her.
Wow.
So I do, I put it together. I even put like a Valentine's card in because it's close, and like how much I would love to work with her, and I put it under the door, and I wait and wait and wait, and nothing really happens. And then all of a sudden my agent calls and says, they want to see you for Crazy for You. And I was like, oh. And I thought, oh, maybe she got the resume and saw that it was a dancer. Maybe, I'm putting them together like all these things in my head. But then I run into Vinny and he's like, oh, I'm so sorry. I forgot to give it to her.
Oh my God. Vinny.
Oh my God.
Vinny. He's not like that. I think, I don't know what was going on.
He was busy. He was casting Crazy for You for Crazy.
He was busy casting Tylee is what he was doing.
Yeah. So the audition for Crazy for You is on a day that I can't go because I'm going to pitch, I was beginning to write industrials. I was pitching a show in Orlando.
Jesus.
So I couldn't go. And so, but I had friends, Michael Durant had all these friends that were in the show. And I was like, oh God, I don't know what to do. And so I wrote a note and I left it backstage saying like, look, if you can see me the next day when I'm back, I'll rent a studio. I'll do everything, because I'd really love to be seen. And I got a really nice phone call from the dance captain saying like, no, unfortunately we can't do that. So maybe next time. And I was all like, so depressed. And I go to Orlando and I go do the pitch and I did something else and I have dinner with my friends at Disney. And this is the time that you had answering machines, and I didn't even bother checking. And by the time I did, there were like 10 messages saying they didn't find anyone. They want to see you tomorrow.
Oh my God.
It was like this whole thing. So I changed my flight. I left early in the morning. I had my friend who lives in this building come up, get my tap shoes and my curling iron and leave it at a studio so I could quickly, fix myself up. I go to the studio. I go to the theater with my luggage from the plane. It's between shows on a Wednesday. They're all there and they put me through, by myself on stage.
Amazing.
That's
like
great.
all the things. And at one point they're like, they go, we do the
That
dancing.
doesn't happen. You don't often get to go on the stage where the show is playing.
No.
That's serious.
They go they're like, okay, the musical director brings you over and they're like, okay, drop with that long face. And they're like, and I didn't realize it was a lyric from the song. So I felt like, oh, am I not smiling enough? Anyway, the long and short of it was they hired me on the spot.
Oh, that's so great.
Oh.
What a great story.
Charmed life.
And then it was like, all those like follies, like the set prep for the evening show, they all came on.
Oh,
and I was,
my God. Yeah.
On the floor.
It was like a joke.
Oh, that's
It's
so
too
great.
unreal.
And a guy in the orchestra, one of the musicians was there, and he was writing a book about musical theater, and he wrote my story as the
Oh, I
foreword.
love it.
Wow.
I mean, it was
that.
like,
Yeah,
oh my
that's a
God.
really good story.
Good
That
story.
was, yeah, that was a really...
That's actually the opposite story of why I originally wanted to start this podcast. It was it was all about like the misses and the crazy stuff the bad crazy stuff happened. This is
I've got
better.
plenty of those.
No, but this is better. And maybe another time we'll have you come back and tell some of those. This is better. This is a great way. This is actually a great way to end today's episode because this is such a great story and it's such a great thing about the wonderful things that can happen. And, and you also made it happen, which is really cool.
Yeah, I mean, you're easy to like, you're responsible, you got the right attitude.
And you got some talent.
And you got some talent, kids.
Hey.
Stick with it. Stick with it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You're the best.
I mean, I will say that, like, I anybody that listening that, like, it was just in doing that one extra thing of, like, sending the note to, I mean, there's so many ways to do things, and I was a big rule follower, and that was the first time I broke a rule in a way,
I talk about in my press release workshop, I say, back in the day, we used to have a thing called the Ross reports.
Oh, God, yes.
Everybody of a certain age, you see them nodding. I'm like,
Uh-huh.
and we would sit on the living room floor and just take all of our new postcards and all of our print out on the word processor, but change the name of the person and send it and drink some shitty wine. Send it to 150 freaking agents.
I don't know if the word processor was around at that time. I think we were all handwriting.
I had a word processor. I'm very high tech. I've always been.
Right.
I am.
Okay.
Yeah, just because my mic didn't work last night. Don't give me a hard time. Let's see, now I've lost my train of thought.
Sorry, you were talking about the Ross
writing. And you had a word processor.
Right, and you were sending things to Ross.
And we sent to 150 freaking agents.
Right.
What you should have done is just pick the best 10 for you.
Right.
And focus on them. That's all. But then, now, people now can Google, what does this manager specialize in? Back then, you were like, oh, they sound like fun. And then it turns out they only do Shakespeare.
I think just on a side note, we're going to change the name of Google to something else because they're so busy changing names instead of Googling it, actually use Quant instead. That's all I'm going to say.
This sounds really sexual.
No.
Okay, I have an old college friend who, when I call her up once a month or so to talk to her, at about 30 or 40 minutes into the conversation, she'll say, all right, I'm going to let you go.
Oh, I hate when people say that, right? It's so weird. But
I hope that she's listening to this and figures out who she is.
Right. Well, I think
we are going to let you go because you're a busy person.
And it is everybody
so
we know
much.
that says that.
It's
Thank
everybody
you.
we know.
Yeah.
Hey, thanks for checking us out. Links to today's guest can be found in the show notes.
Don't forget to subscribe, like us, rate us, and tell all your friends about arts and craft.